I want to now bring in on this broadcast William Yang, senior journalist, who's joining us from Taipei. William, thank you for taking the time out for joining us here on India Today. I want to know what's the perception, how are the people of Taiwan really looking at this news that there could be, at this point still could be, a visit by Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan?
So I think people in Taiwan overall are pretty excited, and they're not also very surprised by her decision of coming to visit Taiwan, given how I think she has long been known for standing up, for showing solidarity for democracy and human rights, and her previous public comment in the U.S. about the need to show support for Taiwan has, I think, sent a pretty clear signal to the people over here that she will and she intends to make the trip happen.
Diplomatically, it's sending across a message. Militarily, is there a concern? Because China is sending out a very strong warning, saying our military won't sit idly by. There's already talk about drills being conducted at the Taiwan Strait.
So I think the very important thing for the international community to understand about how Taiwanese people view these military threats is that these threats have always been there. No matter Pelosi is visiting Taiwan or not, China has been using the so-called gray zone tactics by flying their fighter jets into the air defense identification zone around Taiwan over the last few years. And these military drills have always been organized and held around Taiwan throughout the year. So it doesn't matter whether she is visiting or not, unless China is really going to increase or step up and escalate the level of their responses. Taiwanese people basically are not too concerned about how China is going to respond. And as most of the experts have already put it out there, it is not also in Beijing's interest to actually get into a full-blown security conflict with China, with the U.S. Yeah.
There is that common conception which many are saying that China essentially would be shooting itself in the foot if it took this forward militarily. So you're saying that even this kind of a threat coming in from China is not something new, for the people of Taiwan, really, William?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just like Ukraine or Russia's neighboring countries have been living under the constant threat. It's pretty much the same for Taiwan over the last few decades. It has never stopped, and China has actually increased the frequency of these kind of military deployment and intimidation campaign over the last few years. So really, unless Beijing is ready to risk all the other possibilities and engage in an escalated confrontation, Taiwanese people will remain relatively calm and just wait and see how Beijing responds to Pelosi's visit. But the one thing that the international community should also pay attention to is the non-military intimidation campaigns, because news has actually just came in that China's custom has suspended the import of more than 100 Taiwanese companies' food and agricultural import just this morning. So economic sanctions or economic retaliation is another very effective way for China to punish Taiwan in the light of Pelosi's possible visit.
William, do you think that if Nancy Pelosi actually touches down in Taipei or, on the island nation, do you believe that it could give some clarity as far as United States stand on Taiwan's formal independence is concerned? Because they've kind of, been shy of talking about that or taking a very concrete stand on that.
I don't think her visit is going to change anything in the U.S. official stance on Taiwan. As we can see, the White House, the Pentagon, and all national security-related American officials have all come out to reiterate their commitment to the One China policy, and that is not to recognize any form of Taiwan sovereignty officially, which is obviously going to change the status quo across the Taiwan Strait. And that is something that Washington is very clear that they are going to avoid. And I think Taiwan also knows that very well. So that is unlikely to happen, even if her visit does kind of raise the concern and heighten the tensions across the Taiwan Strait for the time being.
I'm also curious to understand, William, from your perspective, what do you think the United States really stands to gain from this kind of messaging from Nancy Pelosi? Because there has been some talk, from the White House, from several top leaders of the United States, that they would rather that Pelosi doesn't do this, that she doesn't visit Taiwan.
I think it is a consistent message from Washington that they support engagement and exchanges between elected officials and Taiwanese government or Taiwanese officials, because that is in the principle and in the interest of both the U.S. and Taiwan. And that has actually become a new tradition or a new precedence since even the Trump administration. So it's been a few years that elected officials have been visiting Taiwan. But of course, Nancy Pelosi's stature and her seniority in the U.S. politics is going to further strengthen that view. But at the same time, I think it's a very fine balance that Washington is playing over here, because they are not sending any so-called cabinet members to Taiwan, but rather is from the legislative branch. So technically, the federal government cannot really intervene with that. The Congress has the authority and independence to decide their own schedules and their own visits. So I think this is a really fine balance that Washington is playing here. But at the same time, the federal government has already put their weight behind and support Pelosi's decision of visiting, and at the same time warning China not to make any sudden move to actually tilt the balance across the Taiwan Strait.
All right, William Yang, thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us here on India Today.